Does your employee tell you, I am happy to come to work? This is the challenge which is catching up with all organizations. A survey says around 25% of employees leave the organization because they are not happy with the culture of the organization. Hi, I am Agnelo Joseph. Welcome to ProEdge. I'm going to talk about how do you build trust leadership and trust culture in the organization. When we talk about trust, let me give you a very simple story. Once there was a businessman who was a frequent flyer, was traveling from London to New York. The flight was completely packed. Midway through the journey, there came a turbulence. And turbulence, I've been talking a lot about it, right? This turbulence was heavy this time. It really shook the daylight of all the passengers on the flight. There were a lot of tense emotions, stress. Everyone was praying. Everyone was worried what will happen. And this businessman, who was a very seasoned professional, an experienced guy and a traveler, generally doesn't get too bogged down by these turbulences because he's well aware this turbulence will get to a conclusion. But this time, he too was scared. And he was looking around. And he was worried, will he make it? Then somewhere in the corner of his eyes, he saw a small child, roughly around 10 years old, sitting in a corner, reading a book, without being worried about what's happening on the flight. In between, she would just look up, roll her eyes, see around, go back to her book, continue her reading. This man was intrigued as to why all of us are so perturbed and all are so stressed out, worried, almost praying to God Almighty to save them. This child is absolutely not perturbed. She is cool. She's sitting there reading a book. So he said, let me ask the child. He goes about it to ask the child. He says, child, there's so much of turbulence on the flight. Aren't you getting scared? She said, no. Why? Look, we are all scared. There's too much of turbulences. She said, no, I don't get scared. Why? He said, because my father is a pilot and he has promised me to take me home safely. What does this story tell us? Story tells us the ability of trust in the leadership. As a child, she was completely trustful of her father's ability to take her home. She knew her father would never falter her, but will do everything possible to ensure that they land safely. So do employees look up to you also, my dear friends. So do your team look up to you as a leader. As an entrepreneur, as a businessman, or as a leader of a corporate world, when you're trying to create, or organization is trying to create a trust culture, what drives trust culture is the leadership. The leadership that you show, the leadership that inspires people to stay back. As I said earlier, people don't leave organizations. They leave the leader. So are you the leader who inspires people to trust in the journey of this turbulence of COVID? Are you in a position to build that kind of a culture going forward? Is the organization ready to create such kind of trust culture in the organizations? I'll explain to you with few pointers that will help you to build this kind of a trust culture and trust leadership in your organization. The first pillar to build a trust culture is called communication. As a leader, are you engaging with your teams? Are you talking to your teams? Or as an entrepreneur, are you talking to your customers? In an organization, when you are trying to build, or as a leader, always keep it bottom up, not top down. Top down is 36,000 feet above. Bottom up is 0 feet above. So it gives you a good perspective. As a leader, you'll get to hear a lot and you talk less. That's communication. Whether it is verbal, written, or in person, you got to do it more often. That's when you build a good trust leadership. The second pointer that I'm going to talk about, how do you build a trust culture and trust leadership, is post-communication. It's very important that you define the processes. See, many organizations fail to do that. And that's why you have 25% and above attrition happening. And then we start fighting why people are leaving, and we hinge everything on compensation or all other environmental issues. But maximum time people leave because the boss is not clear. If the leader is not clear, how do you expect people to believe you? So therefore, processes are very important. Put in your processes, whatever you talk, document it. Make it transparent, make it available to people. Once you do that, there is going to be a lot of belief in what you say. Your actions become louder than your words. That's the part 2 which you need to do. As a leader, make it visible to your team. The third most important point in an organization or in your leadership style should be collaboration. Are you a leader who's going to take away the problem statements, or are you a leader who's going to add to the problem statement? There is a very good saying, that we have, इस रूम में काफी हाथी है, कम चीते हैं. So in your team, do you have more elephants or do you have cheetahs? Or do you remove the elephants, add to the cheetahs? How do you make the balance? As a leader, it's very important that you set this collaboration very well in the organization. Post-communication, laying down the processes, it's very important to check back as a leader. Are you helping the teams cross-mobilize? Are you helping cross functions? Or are you the one who's saying, itne mein itna hi, me and my team? The more you do me and your team, perhaps your team may think highly about you, but as an organizational leader, you will fail. Don't do that. Get into collaboration bandwagon. Help elevate your team's problem. The fourth way to build the trust culture is recognition. See, it's very important. People like recognition. Teams like a pat on the back. As a leader, are you doing that? Whenever somebody does good, does it need to be linked to a output, which is a number, or is it the effort? They say when you practice, net practice में effort देखे जाते हैं. मैदान में वो effort दिखते हैं. Sachin Tendulkar spends more than 4 hours to 8 hours before a match, net practicing. Why does he need to do? He did it till his end. Practice makes a person perfect, right? So whenever you are seeing your team putting an effort, give a pat on the back. But when you see that there is something going wrong, do it in private. Don't do it in public. When you do it in public, you are only admonishing your authority. You are demonstrating your power. It's not going to help. The person will decide at that moment, come sooner or later, I don't want to work with this guy. And that's going to impact the culture of the organization. So don't think that as a leader, you are an individual. You are a part of the organization's culture. You are the one who's setting the culture. Therefore, it is your responsibility to make sure recognize. And very importantly, if you recognize cross-functionally, go and recognize somebody else in the cross-function, your own valuation of the organization and your own respect will increase. Secondly, promote innovation. Innovation is cross-ideation. If somebody comes up with another idea, get it implemented. That's what recognition is. Recognition is not about monetary rewards only. People don't work for monetary rewards. Remember that. Recognize. People like pat on the back. I like somebody tells me you've done a good job. That's $1 million for me. And that will give you a larger output. Recognize. So in conclusion, let me tell you, culture is about sharing a common idea and executing it with passion. If you are a leader and you're trying to build an organization, it's very important that you create a trust culture, not for yourself, but for your employees, for your customers. Because at the end of the day, it's your customer who will see the final product, will see the final response, and that will be our brand value. As a leader, if your team is saying, I enjoy coming to work, that means they enjoy your inspired leadership. I look forward to you joining me in my next episode of Pro Edge. If you have any queries, do write to us at team@tattvaworld.com. This is Agnelo Joseph signing off. Remember, Tattvam Asi.